All right, everybody, welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. I am Glen West, your senior writer here at the site. LSU begins their bowl preparation this week, and Frank Wilson met with the media, touched on a number of different topics. Today, I really want to kind of focus on some of the things he said about his future, this coaching staff, and kind of the trajectory that we've been getting here. Really over the last week, it's been a little while since we hopped on one of these things and talked to you guys about the future of the program with this new staff. And so, a lot of things have kind of come to fruition here within these last 7 days. Blake Baker has decided to stay. LSU's retained the majority of their defensive staff. This defensive line coach still remains to be kind of up in the air here as we sit on Wednesday, December the 10th at 9:20 as we're recording this podcast. So there's a lot that we want to dive into, I think, from a coaching staff perspective here with this podcast. We'll touch on some of the things with the game and related to the game at towards the end here. There are some injury updates, some guys that are not going to be participating in this bowl game that we can kind of get ahead on here as LSU begins their bowl preparation on Thursday with their first practice. So before we get into some of that stuff, just want to ask you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're following us along on the channel there, please hit the like and subscribe button. Please comment. Always helps us out with the algorithms. And then certainly if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you might be listening to this podcast, to please leave us a like and a review there as well. Always helps us out as we try to grow out the network as much as possible and reach as many LSU fans as we can. So, with that being said, we just, I think, probably one of the bigger topics this week and things that you'll start to see kind of go into motion here is LSU kind of putting the finishing touches on their coaching staff. That really started to, I think, kind of trend in a direction of finality this last week when Blake Baker made the decision over the weekend to not take any of the head coaching positions at Tulane or Memphis that he was up for. He decided to stay, and that was a days and weeks long courtship that Lane Kiffin and certainly LSU tried their best to get over the finish line, and that does wind up being what Blake Baker decides. He wants to be the defensive coordinator here in 2026. Those parts kind of align. Following his decision there, LSU elects to retain Corey Raymond as their cornerbacks coach, Jake Olson as safeties coach, Kevin Peoples as the edge coach, and I think that Baker decision really kind of came down to a couple different things. If you listen to him, he was on ESPN Baton Rouge radio here in the morning with the off the bench guys, Jacob Hester and Matt Flynn, and just kind of talked about the decision that the process that went into making his decision to stay at LSU. And it really, I think, at the end of the day, comes down to his family and just not wanting to move again after a couple of years here, where they've kind of rooted they've kind of found their base here in Baton Rouge and found been around a lot of family. Baker's wife is from Louisiana. He went and played school at Tulane, which is why Tulane was such a intriguing job offer for him, to potentially be the head coach of his alma mater. But he loves what LSU's building here. He loves what what the defense has been able to do over the last couple of years. When he took over a couple of years ago as a defensive coordinator, it was a defense that was 108th in total defense. It was 81st in scoring defense, and he's in very short amount of time brought this to a top 25 defense here over the last couple of years. They've finally given him the kind of players and resources here this last year to really make this one of the most improved defenses, I think, in the conference and around the country here over the last couple of years. And so being able to retain Baker on your defensive side of the ball is just really massively important. If you're Lane Kiffin, that was, it's going to come with a pay raise. We understand it's going to be kind of in that $3 million per year ballpark. And I think for Baker here, the whole decision was, okay, do I want to take a G6 job, head coaching job, and spend a couple of years there, develop that program, and then jump into the Power 4 ranks, which is where I think he ultimately wants to be? Or does he want to stay as the LSU defensive coordinator? And then when that Power Four job does open up and there is interest in him, does he just make the jump from Power Four defensive coordinator to Power Four head coach? I mean, you've seen tons of examples of that in recent years, and I think that's the route that he ultimately chose. So this is something that, if Baker deciding to stay, in my opinion, it could certainly lead to not just a next year kind of deal, but maybe 2 or 3 years that they're able to hold on to him and keep the majority of this defensive staff in place in the process here. Of course, you want to continue to see this defense grow and develop and continue to get great players, and I think that with the NIL resources that LSU has committed to Lane Kiffin, they're certainly going to be here over this next couple weeks in particular. A stretch here where he gets to, get an understanding for Blake Baker and this defensive staff and the pieces that they need to go out there and run back a really, really solid defense that took immense strides here in 2025. So that's the first piece of this. That's the first piece of positive news, is that LSU was able to retain the majority of its defensive staff. I guess we can talk about this now, but the one caveat to that right now is the defensive line coach. That's where LSU is still trying to find that position. It has not officially been filled yet. Kyle Williams, the defensive line coach from 2025 season, all reports are that he is electing not to continue coaching at LSU. That's a his choice kind of thing. It's not a LSU's choice or a Lane Kiffin choice. It sounds like he just wants to spend time with family. He's a, an NFL, all pro player who's, certainly set up for life with the kind of money that he made in the NFL and being a really good NFL player. And so that grind of coaching every day and the recruiting and everything that goes on top of it, I think was just something that Kyle wanted to try to see if he could do, and honestly, he did a really nice job. I thought the defensive line really was probably the one of the big winners of fall camp, certainly. But even into the season, I think you saw guys like Bernard Gooden and Jacobian Guillory have really nice seasons for LSU. Maybe not quite the impact that we thought that they were going to have coming into the year, but still a really, really good, solid defensive line that made enough plays for LSU to be able to be the kind of top 25 defense that it was. So you certainly miss Kyle Williams and wish him the best in whatever he decides to do going forward. But LSU quickly pivoted here, and they made a real splash to try to go get one of the best in the business at the defensive line position, and that was with Elijah Robinson, the current defensive coordinator for Syracuse. He's been a defensive line coach at Texas A&M for a number of years under Jimbo Fisher, but when that coaching change was made a few years ago in College Station, Robinson had the opportunity to go be a defensive coordinator at Syracuse, so he jumped on that opportunity. The defenses there have not been stellar these last couple of years with him as the coordinator. So they had kind of, made the decision to make him, give him kind of a demotion. They wanted him to be the defensive line coach only. And so that's something that Robinson, I think, is, there are other opportunities and other places where I think Robinson feels like he can be an elite defensive line coach and at some really premier programs, and LSU being one of them. And so LSU really kind of jumped on him really this last weekend is when you started to hear some of the buzz. Thursday, Friday, it was when kind of the reports started to break that LSU was really making a big push to land Robinson. He was in Baton Rouge, on Friday, Saturday kind of deal, and had him in for several days. And it looked like this was trending towards potentially getting done, a deal getting done. And there were a couple of reports, certainly by our CBS sports guys, Matt Zenitz and those crew, saying that it was certainly leaning towards LSU potentially bringing in Elijah Robinson as the defensive line coach. But here in recent days, Nebraska and Penn State have made big pushes to also try to bring in Elijah Robinson as the defensive line coach. And so there is definitely some more up in the air kind of coin toss feelings, I think, about LSU being able to get this done and get it over the finish line with Robinson as the D-line coach. And that would sting a little bit. That would certainly sting a little bit because he's definitely one of the more respected coaches here at the position in the country. You just signed this elite class of defensive linemen with Lamar Brown, Richard Anderson, Deuce Geralds. You got Trent Henderson on the edge, who'll be coached by Kevin Peoples. But that trio there, plus what you have here on the current roster, a former 5-star and Dominic McKinley, Walter Mathis played some really good snaps for you as a freshman. You've still got some young players in this room as well. So there's a lot to be excited about, I think, for this defensive line position coach job. But it sounds like right now Robinson's a little bit torn on what he wants to do. You hope that decision kind of comes sooner than later, so LSU can pivot to somewhere else if they need to, or they get their guy. Like I don't think this is over by any stretch of the imagination as we sit here on Wednesday morning, but it certainly does feel like it's maybe not trending as heavily towards LSU as maybe it was, 4 or 5 days ago. And so with that, their next question is kind of like, okay, who does LSU kind of pivot to here? Everybody wants to know about Ed Orgeron. I think, I don't know that that's going to be a realistic option here. I think LSU had, if Lane Kiffin wanted to hire Ed Orgeron and on day one as he, when he arrived at LSU, I think he could have done that, made that decision. If he didn't make that decision and he took the big swing for a guy like Elijah Robinson, which you do 100 times out of 100. We'll see kind of what happens there. I don't think it happens with Ed Okocho coming back to the program here as a defensive line coach this season. I think probably the more likely route that LSU takes and that Lane Kiffin takes is to promote from within. And, the guy that he brought with him from the defensive side of the ball that from Ole Miss that, is really the only defensive coach or defensive analyst that they brought over from Ole Miss, since he left, was Chris Kiffin, his brother. And so Chris Kiffin's a guy, just a little background on him. He's been a defensive lines coach. He's been a defensive coordinator. He's been a linebackers coach throughout his career. Obviously his father, Monty Kiffin, was an elite mind on the defensive side of the ball. And so he certainly has learned a lot and been around a lot of really great coaches throughout his career. Most recently, his defensive line coach, he was the D-line coach over for the Houston Texans for a number of years. He was the D-line coach, I believe, for the Cleveland Browns very early into Myles Garrett's career. Garrett's turned into one of the elite all-time great defensive linemen in the NFL history. So he's got some background of coaching really great players at the NFL level. He has coached defensive line at Ole Miss going back to really 2012 to 2016 was kind of his range of where he was a D-line coach. So he had some experience of coaching up front and coaching those players. And so I think that would make a lot of sense. Certainly you could pivot and try to find another defensive line coach around there. I just personally haven't heard of a whole ton of names. I think LSU was pretty all in on Elijah Robinson here, and I think that's the right move to make. And I think we'll certainly understand and hear a little bit more as the days go on about whether or not he is going to accept that job or if he's going to Penn State or Nebraska. I think kind of feels like one of the favorites right now in the courtship of Elijah Robinson as the D-line coach. So that's the defensive side of the ball. That's the staff changes that you see, or the staff, I should say, stability that you have on that side of the ball here coming in in 2026. I think it gives here really over the next couple weeks now, Lane Kiffin and those defensive coaches a lot of time to get to know each other. Through these bold practices, Kiffin will be able to see how those guys operate, see how they work, see what kind of players they want to go grab out of the transfer portal. And so that's going to be really, really important here over the next several weeks as LSU prepares for this Texas Bowl game. Do want to shift things over here to the offensive side of the ball because there are there is some finality, I think, to that side as well. Kiffin is bringing not only offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss Jr. over from Ole Miss, but several other assistant coaches. You've got McDonald, the wide receivers coach, George McDonald. You've got Sawyer Jordan, who's the inside wide receivers coach. He's coming over. LSU is also bringing in several analysts, I think, from that side of the ball as well. Offensive line has also been filled for LSU here over the last several days. I think they've targeted. I'm trying. Sorry, I'm trying to remember his name. For the 2025 season, he's coming in. It's going to be here. Let me check. Eric Wolford is going to be the offensive line coach for LSU. He's going to take over for Brad Davis. That had been reported, really over a week ago by Matt Moscona and the 104.5 ESPN crew. And it was initially reported as he was going to come in to coach the offensive line, but they weren't sure exactly if it was going to be a full-time position. And we have confirmed it's going to be the full-time offensive line coach for Eric Wolford. So you've got offensive line, you got wide receivers, you got quarterbacks certainly with Charlie Weiss Jr. and certainly Kiffin's going to be with the quarterbacks as well. You'll see him operate with those guys, and certainly they're also bringing in another quarterbacks coach that's going to help. I'm trying, his name is escaping me too. It's just there's a lot of changes here with LSU here in terms of the uh, uh, coaches that they're bringing in on the offensive side of the ball. So they're bringing in, I believe his name's Nate Davis. I can't remember quite. Dane Stevens, that's what it is. Dane Stevens is what his name is. He's going to be the new quarterbacks coach for LSU. So it's going to be Stevens and Charlie Weiss Jr. working together. It's going to be Wolford on the offensive line. You're going to have McDonald and Sawyer Jordan on the wide receivers group, which leaves just really one position group open for LSU. As you kind of transition here, all of those coaches, by the way, Weiss Jr., Sawyer Jordan, Dane Stevens, and I believe McDonald or Sawyer Jordan, one of the two is over there as well. They've gone back to Oxford to help coach Ole Miss through the rest of the playoff. They've signed their contracts. LSU has them signed, sealed, and delivered, so they will be back here. It's not going to be one of those situations where they go back to Ole Miss and could potentially stay. They are going to be the LSU offensive staff here once Ole Miss's playoff run is over, whatever that might be. So, that's kind of the rundown for offensively what they have so far. And the one position group that is kind of up in the air right now, in terms of a position coach, is running backs, and that's kind of where Frank Wilson comes into play here. That's was one of the very first questions that Frank was asked about on Tuesday in his press conference. He asked about what his future might hold here at LSU. We can just get into it now. He sounded like a coach that was open to the opportunity to come back. He said they've had really he and Kiffin have had good conversations here over the last couple weeks since Kiffin got on board about just how to handle the transition and how to continue to get this 2025 team ready to play a bowl game, and just being there and helping out whenever he can. They have had conversations about his future. They've elected to wait until after the bowl game to announce those decisions, or kind of really come to some final decision there on what they decide to do with Frank Wilson. I will say there is the kind of the overwhelming feeling that you've had over the first week or two is that Kevin Smith, who's the current Ole Miss coach, the current Ole Miss running backs coach, is that he would be joining LSU and being the running backs coach here. We have not heard that there is any finality there. Like, I think that is still a decision that's being made. It doesn't sound like it's something that's coming to an end, or coming to there's no been final decision that's been made there, essentially. And so that could certainly leave the door open for Frank Wilson if Kevin Smith does elect to stay in Oxford or at Ole Miss. So we'll see kind of how that all plays out. I will say, I would be a little bit not surprised, but it would be kind of a turn here if Frank was going to be back. Like, I think that if he was going to be back, Lane Kiffin and him, they would have announced this, a week ago. They would have announced it, days or hours after Kiffin's introductory press conference last Monday. But there's still ongoing conversations there, and so there's nothing really final about what Frank Wilson's future is going to hold for LSU. And I think it's why you paid Lane Kiffin the big check to make these decisions. Personally, I think if you're LSU, if you know Louisiana recruiting, you know how valuable Frank Wilson's been to getting those players and to getting New Orleans area players and just Louisiana recruits in general. He has great relationships with all these coaches and all these high schoolers and their families, and so I think it'd be a loss. It'd be a loss if Frank is not on this staff in any capacity in 2026. You certainly would hope that he goes and finds another job somewhere very quickly, and I'm sure he be tapping into his roots here in Louisiana. So that'd be something else you'd have to recruit against if that were to play out in that fashion. But nothing's been decided yet. We'll get some clarity after the bowl game there about what the future holds for Frank Wilson. But that's the only position group right now really on staff, and the defensive line coach, of course, those are the two that are really still up in the air at this point from a coaching perspective. So gone about 20 minutes on the coaching staff. I do want to touch on some of the bowl preparation stuff. LSU starts practice up again here on Thursday. We do have some updates on some guys that won't be participating in the bowl game. These are mainly due to injuries. Frank touched on a couple of them, but Garrett Nussmeier will not be playing in this game. It's still dealing with that ab injury, and I just think it's probably in Garrett's best interest and in LSU's best interest that he goes and he focuses on his NFL draft future. Whit Weeks, the linebacker, will not be playing in this game either, from what we understand from Frank yesterday. Monster Delane, the cornerback, will not be playing in this game either. There is a chance that center Braylon Moore can get ready for this game and be able to play. That's the kind of the one that's a little bit questionable right now about how much work he'll be able to do over the next couple of weeks before the bowl game. And then Aaron Anderson was the other one that Frank mentioned yesterday. It's unlikely that he's going to play in this game. So it's very up in the air right now, but very much leaning towards him not playing Aaron Anderson in this bowl game as well. So those are kind of the injury updates. There are going to be other guys that opt out, and certainly we'll hear more about that here as the days go. And certainly as LSU begins its preparation for the bowl game, I would imagine we hear some more clarity there on some veterans that are not going to be participating. One name that Frank Wilson did share yesterday, Jack Pyburn, is going to be kind of on the fence about. He hasn't officially made that decision yet. A couple of these veterans haven't made officially that decision, but I would imagine that those are coming here relatively soon. And Pyburn was one of them that he had kind of thrown out there on Tuesday as maybe not electing not to play in the bowl game. So you've got the NFL draft guys, you've got the potential transfer portal guys. Ahmad Bro was one of the early guys to announce that he's going to be entering the transfer portal. Frank Wilson did say that Ahmad Bro is going to be playing in this game. So he will, go through the next couple weeks with LSU before entering the transfer portal there on January 2nd and, looking for another place to go to continue his career. As of right now, we have 5 players, I believe, from LSU who have announced their intentions to go into the transfer portal. So there will certainly be more to come on both sides of the ball, I would imagine. And it's going to be a major overhaul, especially on the offensive side of the ball. We've written, if you haven't checked it out yet, you can head over to Go 24/7. We've kind of done our rankings of the positions by position that LSU needs to go out and attack the transfer portal aggressively for. No breaking news here, but quarterback is the clear-cut number one position, I think, on the entire roster that LSU needs to go find multiple quarterbacks in the portal next year. So, or next, at the start of next year. So all that will be covered over at Go 24/7 for you guys. We've got a bunch of content on the way as well. Just in preparation for this bowl game, in preparation for the transfer portal, that's the next big piece of this, right? Is once you get the staff solidified, and it sounds like they've done that for the most part. There's still a few position coaches out there that they need to fill, but it's really down to the most important part of what of why you brought Lane Kiffin here for the roster construction portion of this is that the transfer portal has been something he's really embraced over the last 4 or 5 years. Ole Miss has had, like I think I've said a bunch here, they've had um, three of their last top four recruiting classes from the portal have been top five classes. So I would imagine LSU goes in and they take a ton of players, and they're going to be very aggressive in the kinds of players that they go get. They're going to try to get starters at the Power Four level at a number of important positions on offense and defense. And that process here is already underway, as I'm sure that they're having conversations with both the defensive and offensive staffs about how to go about getting the best players possible for those positions and competing as early as year one here in the Lane Kiffin era. So with that, we'll have all the coverage for you guys over at Go 24/7. I hope you stick with us. And for that, I'm Glenn West, and thanks for watching and listening to Go 24/7 podcast.